There are bonds that time cannot erase, and there are moments so pure they echo louder than words. In today's video, we step into a world where loyalty spans lifetimes and memory knows no species. These are stories of reunion, of animals and the humans who once saved them, raised them, loved them. What happens when they're separated for years and then meet again? Which animal will remember after a decade? Which one will run, leap, or cry in joy at the sight of an old friend? Stay with us as we uncover 30 unforgettable reunions that prove one thing. When it comes to love, animals never forget. Let's explore with Animal Prime. 1. The dog who heard a memory. 3 years. That's how long the dog had waited. Not in a kennel, not behind a gate, but in his heart. As the pickup truck approached down the gravel road, he didn't see the man behind the wheel, but he heard something. A sound, a rhythm in the tires, a memory. And just like that, his ears perked up. He bolted from the porch, sprinted past the fence line, and launched himself at the car door before it even stopped. The door opened, and the man stepped out. The dog froze, just for a second, and then melted into him, whining, jumping, collapsing over and over again. This wasn't just a pet remembering a scent. It was a soul recognizing another. Two, the cat who came home. They said she was lost. The posters faded in the sun. The neighbors stopped looking. Even the family started whispering that maybe she was gone for good. But then one cold evening, exactly 370 days after she disappeared, a soft thud was heard outside the back door. A scratch, a meow. The door creaked open, and there she was. The moment she saw her human, the cat leapt into their arms. No hesitation, no fear. Just the trembling weight of something deeply familiar curled into their chest. How far had she wandered? How had she survived? No one knows. What they do know is this: she found her way back, not to a house, but to a heart. Three, the horse who waited at the fence. They had grown up together, girl and horse. Every morning before school, she'd brush his mane and whisper stories only he would hear. Every afternoon, he'd be there waiting. But then came college, life, distance. 2 years passed. When she returned, older now, a little more tired, she wasn't sure he'd even remember. She didn't call out, just stood by the fence watching. And then he lifted his head, his eyes locked onto hers, ears forward, muscles stiff. Then he moved. Not a trot, not a gallop, but something in between, a dance. He pressed his head against her chest, softly, rhythmically, and she cried, not from surprise, but from recognition. Because sometimes love doesn't fade, it waits. Four, the soldier and his partner. In the chaos of war, there are few things solid. For Staff Sergeant Blake, that anchor was Rocky, a military working dog trained to detect explosives. Together they served 2 tours, they saved lives, they endured explosions, they slept under stars with no sky. When Blake's deployment ended, Rocky stayed behind. They said it was protocol, logistics, nothing personal. 2 years passed. One day, a special operation allowed veterans to adopt their retired service animals. Blake applied, hoping, barely believing. Then came the call. Rocky was coming home. At the airport, when the crate opened, the silence broke instantly. Rocky howled. His body shook uncontrollably, and Blake, tough as steel, dropped to his knees. There are bonds that don't understand distance, only devotion. Five, the rabbit who never let go. She was small, nervous, and entirely alone when the family found her. A rabbit trembling behind their backyard shed after a storm. They took her in, nursed her, held her until she learned how to trust. But rabbits, they said, don't bond like dogs, don't remember like cats, don't attach the same way. They were wrong. Months later, after she'd been temporarily rehomed due to a family emergency, the little rabbit was returned. At first, she hesitated at the doorway, but the moment the little boy sat down on the floor, the rabbit leapt straight into his lap, bearing her nose under his shirt like nothing had changed. Because to her, nothing had. These aren't just reunions. They are echoes of trust returning home, and we've only just begun. In the next chapter, we leave the fences and front doors behind and head into the wild, where lions, deer, and elephants remember the hands that once helped them. Will the wild forget, or will the heart remember? Stay with us. 6, the dog who couldn't see, but still knew age had taken her sight and her hearing. She waited, still. One day her owner, gone for a year of treatment overseas, returned. Quietly. No words, no cues. She lifted her head slowly, uncertain. Then she took a shaky step forward, then another. And then, like lightning, she rushed into him, pressing her graying body into his legs, tail thudding wildly. She didn't need to see him. She felt him, and that was enough. 7, the wild cat who found her way back. She was never meant to stay, a rescued stray with one blind eye and a survivor's silence. But for 3 months, she shared a porch, a food bowl, and eventually, hands that didn't hurt. One day she vanished, no blood, no tracks, just absence. 6 weeks passed. Then one dawn she returned, her fur patchy, paw injured. But her eyes, those fierce, stormy eyes, softened the moment she saw the porch light. She limped forward. Not to the food bowl, not to the porch swing, but to the woman sitting silently with hands open. And she leaned in, pressing her body against her savior's chest. Because sometimes wild doesn't mean ungrateful. It means waiting until you're ready to say thank you. 8, the airport dog who waited. The terminal buzzed with noise. Bags rolled, doors opened. No one noticed the dog in the corner. Quiet, motionless. Abandoned, they said. But he wasn't waiting for a flight. He was waiting for a face. It took 4 days to track down the mistake. The foster parent who missed the pickup. The confusion with flights. When the owner finally arrived, she didn't say a word. She simply called his name. The dog's ears flicked. Then he bolted, across a sea of luggage and strangers, straight into her arms, knocking her backward in a frenzy of licking, whining, and joy. Airports may be full of arrivals, but for this dog, it was a return to home. 9. The cat who crawled to say thank you. She wasn't expected to survive. A rescue case with a crushed paw and spine damage, barely responsive. They gave her a name, Hope. Surgery was long, healing longer. She didn't walk for months, but she purred. And she looked deeply at the vet who refused to give up. When the day came to say goodbye, they placed her on the floor of the rehab center. She stood still for a moment. Then, with shaking limbs and eyes locked on the woman kneeling nearby, she crawled, not out of fear, not out of desperation, but to press her forehead into the vet's chest. It was not a sprint. It was a thank you. Every inch earned. 10. The flood survivor. The hurricane took everything. Roofs, cars, livelihoods. And for one family, it took their dog. Swept away by water, missing for 5 days. Until a rescue center miles away called. She's here, tired, hungry, but alive. When the family arrived, she didn't bark, didn't whine. She just saw them and ran, straight into the arms of the child who never stopped crying her name. Covered in mud, ribs visible, but her tail still wagged. Because love doesn't drown, it finds a way back. 11. The lion who remembered Christian was just a cub when he met his human family. Raised in a London apartment, he slept on carpets and played with toys. But lions don't stay small. Eventually, Christian was returned to the wild in Kenya. It was the right thing, the natural thing. A year later, the humans returned, unsure if he'd remember. They stood near a ridge calling his name. For a moment, silence. Then from the horizon came a blur of gold. The lion sprinted faster than anyone expected, launching into their embrace. He stood on 2 feet, wrapping massive paws around their shoulders. It wasn't a mauling, it was a hug, a lion's hug. The leopard who snuggled. They called him untouchable, found tangled in a snare, half-starved and snarling. But the man who rescued him didn't flinch. He fed him, sat with him, waited. And years later, when they met again at a sanctuary, the leopard didn't growl. He padded forward calmly. And then he leaned, rubbed his cheek into the man's shoulder, closed his eyes. A wild animal, once feral, now trusting. Not because he was tamed, but because he remembered.
I cannot say I've never felt fearful. Come, Freddy, come. My leopards are about 70 kilos now and they jump.
13. The deer who heard her name. It was a whisper, soft, trembling. But from the edge of the woods, a pair of ears twitched. Then, movement. Legs that bounded through trees. Hooves that barely touched the ground. She came flying out of the brush, straight to the woman kneeling by the fence. Not for food, not for shelter, for recognition. Because once, as a fawn, that woman saved her from drowning. And even now, fully grown, wild as wind, she remembered. She always remembered. 14. The bear who waved. He was enormous, nearly 600 pounds. A wild rescue, long since released. Tourists were warned not to approach. Rangers said he was aloof, independent. But when the man who once rehabilitated him arrived for a visit, something shifted. The bear rose, towering, eyes sharp. Then gently he stood upright and lifted one paw. A wave, not trained, not coerced, just a single silent gesture that said, "I know you."
Look at this distinguished gentleman. Look at the way he is sitting. Yes, very distinguished.
15. The elephant's memory. It had been over a decade. The sanctuary had changed. The caretakers too. But when Lek returned, her hair now gray, her voice softer, the elephant froze. She didn't trumpet. She didn't charge. She walked, slowly, steadily. And when she reached Lek, she wrapped her trunk around her waist. For nearly 2 minutes, neither moved. Because elephants don't just remember faces, they remember kindness. "16. The fox who came back. Every winter, he waited, not by a door, not in a kennel, but at the edge of a snowy meadow in the same spot outside a quiet cabin. A fox, wild, once rescued as a kid after his mother was lost in a storm, released years ago. And yet each December, he returned, stood still, watched the porch, waited, until the old man stepped outside with warm hands and an old scarf. Then the fox would take a few cautious steps and press his head into the man's hand, just once, before vanishing into the woods again. Because sometimes love doesn't stay. It visits." 17. The dolphin who remembered her name. She swam close to the shore, closer than she ever should have. A marine biologist who once nursed her as a calf stood at the water's edge. It had been 3 years. He called her name softly. The dolphin breached, then spun. And then, rising again, she brought 2 smaller fins with her. Her calves, she introduced them. She remembered, and she wanted to share. 18. The penguin who found his way home. He was covered in oil, nearly dead when the fishermen found him. They named him Dindim. They cleaned him, fed him, let him rest. And then one day, Dindim swam away. Everyone thought that was the end. But months later, he returned. Not just once, but every year since. Swimming thousands of miles back to the same beach, to the same man. He waddles up, flaps his wings, and lets the man scoop him up like an old friend. Most penguins live in colonies. Dindim chose one person. "19. The monkey who leapt like a child. When she was rescued, she clung to the woman like a newborn. Every night, they slept with arms wrapped around each other. Then came relocation. A new center, new trees. 2 years later, the woman came back. She knelt by the enclosure, called out. From the canopy, a shape dropped, swung down. The monkey screamed, a high, piercing cry of recognition, and threw herself into her arms. She didn't let go for an hour. Neither did the woman. 20. The sea turtle, who said thank you. She'd been trapped in netting. Her flippers cut, her shell cracked. A diver pulled her free, cleaned her wounds, released her. 5 years later, that same diver swam the same reef. A turtle approached, slowly, gently. She circled, brushed his arm, nuzzled against his side. Then she turned and swam away. He wasn't sure, couldn't prove it, but some part of him knew it was her, and maybe she knew him too. The ones we never expected. Sometimes the deepest bonds come from the most surprising places. These are not the lions or dogs of our stories. These are the unsung, the overlooked, the animals we never thought could remember, could love, could return, and yet they did. 21, the parrot who screamed, "I love you." He'd been raised with lullabies and morning coffee. When his owner passed away, the parrot was rehomed, quiet, withdrawn, until the day the man's daughter came to visit. She stepped into the room, and from the cage came a voice, clear, trembling. I love you. I love you. I missed you. Not just mimicry. Memory. 22. The goose who waddled into a hug. He heard the school bus long before anyone else. The moment it squealed to a stop, he ran, wings flapping, feet slapping pavement, until he reached the little boy. Every day, rain or shine, a goose, greeting a child like a father come home from war. 23. The pig who cried with joy. They'd thought she was lost forever, taken from the sanctuary during a storm evacuation. Weeks later, a rescue group found her. The moment she saw her caretaker, she squealed, loud, sharp, relentless, then collapsed onto his boots, pressing her snout into his legs like a toddler, begging not to be left again. Joy can sound loud, and sometimes it sounds like a pig crying. 24. The kangaroo who hugged like a human. He was raised by hand, bottle-fed, tucked in at night. When the rescuer came back years later, they didn't know what to expect. The kangaroo hopped forward slowly, paused, then standing upright, he wrapped his front limbs around the man's waist and stayed. No bouncing, no bounding. Just stillness, the kind only love makes. 25. The sparrow who landed on his shoulder. He'd nursed it after it fell from the nest. Tiny, featherless, helpless. He never caged it, just fed it, sheltered it, waited. One day it flew away, but the next morning it returned, and the next. Until one day as he sat sipping coffee, it landed gently on his shoulder. No chirping, no flapping, just being. Some birds don't build nests, they build memories. 26. The crocodile who knew his name. They said it was impossible, that reptiles don't bond. But Pocho wasn't just any crocodile. After being rescued from a gunshot wound, he spent years with the man who healed him. He'd follow him into the river, come when called, let himself be touched. And when the man passed away, Pocho stopped eating. He waited by the riverbank, days, then weeks, until he slipped quietly away. That, too, was love. 27. The sheep who survived fire. The barn was gone, the pasture burned. They'd assumed everything was lost. But when the family returned, a soft bleat broke the silence. One lone sheep, soot-covered and trembling, limped from the trees. And when the woman knelt, it ran to her, collapsing in her arms, bleeding like it never wanted to let go. Flames didn't take everything. Some bonds burned brighter. 28. The hippo who grew up and remembered. She was barely a week old when rescued from floodwaters, raised by hand, bottle-fed by vets, eventually released. Years later, a researcher returned to the same riverbank. The hippo, now massive, emerged slowly. She walked to the water's edge, locked eyes, and dipped her head into the woman's hand. A touch, a nod, a memory that never washed away. 29. The rooster who never forgot. Every time she came home from work, he crowed. But when she left for college, he stopped. Until one weekend, she came back. And before she even opened the gate, the rooster was there, crowing louder than ever, sprinting in circles, hopping like a child who couldn't contain the joy. Who says only dogs wait by the door? 30. The rhino who leaned in. She was orphaned by poachers, raised in a sanctuary. She didn't play like other calves, didn't trust. But there was one man, patient, gentle, who sat with her every day. Years later, as a full-grown rhino, she saw him again. He approached slowly, hands out, voice low. She stepped forward, and then gently, deliberately, she leaned her massive head into his chest and exhaled. A thank you, a memory, a connection that even ivory couldn't sever. We often think memory is ours alone, that animals live only in the moment. But today we've seen proof otherwise, 30 times over. From dogs and dolphins to roosters and rhinos, the truth is simple and stunning. When animals are treated with love, they remember, they return, and sometimes they love us even more than we love them. What story touched you the most? Do you believe animals truly remember the people who saved them? Share your thoughts below. We'd love to hear your story. And if you want more tales of love, loyalty, and the magic of the natural world, subscribe. Because here we don't just tell stories, we remember them.